Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and if you're watching this the day it came out, it is the Dreamcast's 23rd birthday. Michael Jordan's number, so you know it's going to be a good one, and it is, because man did they rack up the games this year, but we'll get back to that in a second. Before we do anything here though, if you guys could do me a favor, please comment on this video, like the video, and subscribe if you haven't done that. Also, my social media stuff, it's in the description. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, even a Spreadshirt. You can buy merch if you want to. All that sort of stuff is down there. I appreciate the support, and you can check out my new channel called Flying and Eating, which is about me flying around the world, eating stuff, traveling, all that sort of thing. It's a fun little adventure channel. I think you guys might get a kick out of it if you want to see the world from the comfort of your own apartment or house or your chair, what have you. That said, thank you for the support. Now, yes, we're going to be talking some Dreamcast today. Yes, the console is 23 years old if you're watching this the day it came out in the United States and Canada. Obviously, it's a little older in Japan. It came out in November of '98 there, so it's almost 24 over there. And in Europe, the release date is still like a few weeks away. So it's... Yeah, but most people tend to celebrate the American one simply because it was that whole infamous marketing campaign of 9/9/99, which was really just, obviously I still remember it, and it was just a crazy time to be around and be a video game fan, especially at that age. It was just such a powerful experience. But because of that, I think that's why people typically celebrate it. As a super fan of the Sega Dreamcast, I certainly want to mark it every single year, and I pretty much have been ever since the channel started. So before we talk about the specific releases we've got, I kind of want to set up the ground rules here. So what I typically do here is talk about all the games that came out within the last calendar year from the date of September 9th to September 9th. Meaning it's not like a normal calendar year of January 1st to January 1st. So if a game came out in 2021 but it came out after September 9th, 2021, it's on this table. Make sense? Cool. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how this is possible, because this is insane. I'm actually going to put it out there. I think this is the most games the Dreamcast has had since probably like 2003 or 2004. By my count, and this has a huge asterisk with it, it was 11 games. And it's got an asterisk because you might actually be able to boost that number a little bit, but we'll get to it as we go here. Before we do that, though, I want to set something up here. We're doing a contest, a giveaway. The BitStation, they are a distributor for Sega Dreamcast games. They got a hold of me, and we came up with this little plan, and basically we're giving away some games. The information, there's a tweet in the description of this video. What you got to do is go to that tweet, follow me, follow the BitStation, and retweet that tweet, and you are entered. I'll talk about the prizes near the end of the video, but that's all you got to do to enter, and you can win some free Dreamcast games. Sounds pretty good, right? Okay, cool. Now, let's talk about the games. Basically, in the last year, we got this like plethora of games, and it's always kind of funny to me, like, how this is evolving. You know, like, I remember the fall of the Dreamcast. I remember the birth of the independent scene, and I remember the dark years, man. Like, there was, you know, fun fact, there has been at least one game released on the Dreamcast every single year from 1998, with the one exception being 2011. We didn't get a game that year. In 2010, we got Fast Striker, and in 2012, we got Gunlord, but there was nothing in between. That was the darkest year in the Dreamcast history. If you could have talked to me then, a little over a decade ago, and told me, hey, in 2022, you're going to be celebrating the Dreamcast birthday because you're a failure at life and you still want to talk about it. I'm just kidding. If you still want to talk about that in 2022, you can, and you're going to be talking about 11 games plus. I don't think there was any chance I would have believed you, but here we are. Now, I'm sure people wonder, like, why is it that the Dreamcast can have all these new games, but like consoles like the Saturn or the original Xbox or whatever can't? The answer kind of lies in its own ironic history. When Sega built the Dreamcast, they built it with 3 different supported formats. One was the GD-ROM format, which is what the original games actually were printed on. That's what they were designed to be. That's how the Dreamcast was designed to read games. They also had music CD support, which was not really a big deal. A lot of consoles did. But they also put in this unique format called Mill CD. Now, the purpose of it was that it was really just meant to be an attachment to music CDs that would allow for certain visualizations and data enhancement in those music CDs when played on a Dreamcast. Think like you put in some big music CD that comes out, and when you put it in a Dreamcast, uniquely it has like a bonus video, or it has like a custom menu or something bizarre. Like, that was all it was really meant for. It was never even used outside of Japan, and even there, it was only used a couple of times. But eventually, people figured out that, hey, that's an unsigned, unprotected area of the console that can read data. So if you reformat Dreamcast games through that, then it can read those games. Hence the whole burned game phenomenon. Now, while the burned games thing gets a big part of the blame for why the Dreamcast failed, side note, it really wasn't why the console failed, but it didn't do it many favors. It is ironically the reason that the console remains alive in this like zombie-like way, because it means anybody can produce games for it if they want to. On top of that, you have Sega as its ultimate parent company, who's just like, we're cool with it. We're not Nintendo. We don't go after you for celebrating our history. So as a result, you can have an entire little micro industry around the concept of brand new Sega Dreamcast games. And this year, man, the last calendar year, wow, did that happen. So the first one we're going to start with is only here, again, as an asterisk, because it shouldn't technically count. And that game is Intrepid Izzy, which I actually have represented here by 3 different versions. The European build, the Japanese build, and the American build. The American build actually comes with a bonus music CD. When I say build, I use that term very loosely because the game itself is identical. I'm basically putting this out here for a couple of reasons. One, emblematic of the fact that all these independent games are region-free, so it really just boils down to which one do you like the look of the most. But yeah, and the fact that they usually have different variants, and you can get them from different distributors. In Europe, a lot of time it's now Wave and Pixel Heart that's distributing them. In North America, it's usually Video Games New York. But point is, you can usually get these with relative ease. The reason we're talking about this one specifically, though, is that while technically this game came out in the previous calendar year, I did not have it in time for the 22nd birthday video. They basically shipped it around the time of the birthday very intentionally. The consequence of that is that it was not in my possession when I needed to film the video. So I just wanted to show it to you guys, just to be like, hey, no, I do have it. Obviously, I did a whole video on it. In fact, I did a video on every single game here for the most part. So you can check them out if you have more specific questions or are interested in any one of these games. But yeah, Intrepid Izzy. Moving on, though. The first game that actually came out this year that we can totally count with no asterisks whatsoever is Alice Sisters. This was the beginning of the Josh Prod run. Josh Prod is a publisher who is like the dominant superpower of the Dreamcast independent scene. Of the 11 games, as I count them, he did 6. He did more than half of them by himself. And when I say by himself, I just mean his team, his publishing team, was responsible for half of the releases. This one in particular, Alice Sisters, was made by Orion, who's a really cool guy. I've talked to him in the past. He made Alice's Mom's Rescue. This is the sequel to that game. That dude has made more games for the Jaguar CD than Atari did at this point. It's like ridiculous. But this is a fun little platforming game. I quite enjoyed it. And if you like platformers, you know, you can definitely check it out. Again, this one was done through Pixel Heart and Josh Prod. But yeah, cool little release right there. I think Video Games New York probably also sells that one. I'm not totally sure. BitStation might as well. I'll put links to all these guys in the description. You can click around. But yeah, all I'm trying to say is there's places you can get all these things. Josh Prod tends to do these things in like waves, so he does like 3 and 3. So as part of that first wave, he also did a game called Wolf Flame, which was a shoot 'em up, which was kind of funny actually. And I think I said this at the time. There was a time in the Dreamcast independent scene where like every game was a shoot 'em up. It became like a gag. That and the final few official Sega releases were also shoot 'em ups. The console has just become the shoot 'em up machine, to the point where nobody wanted to talk about shoot 'em ups anymore, and they kind of stopped releasing them. So when Wolf Flame came out, it was almost a breath of fresh air. It was like, oh wow, shoot 'em ups, I remember those. How quaint, I haven't seen one of those in a while. This one was pretty good from what I recall. But the other one he did that was also a shoot 'em up was Satazius Next, which was also a cool game. This one actually got a physical edition on the Wii U, and then shortly after that got its physical edition on the Dreamcast, which is funny to think that Dreamcast outlived the Wii U. The Dreamcast outlived the PlayStation 2, the Xbox, the GameCube, all its contemporary rivals, arguably the Nuon, but what's hilarious about that is the Nuon is still sort of technically getting new releases. Isn't that messed up? Like the Dreamcast and the Nuon live, but the Xbox, GameCube, and PS2 are dead. Like, you know, if you're not that familiar with the history of the independent scene, like it is It is pretty an amusing thing. It started in 2003. Dan Lucen, who is now the guy who runs Midwest Gaming Classic, a big convention in Milwaukee, created it. Like, he just did that. He made the first release. It was called Feet of Fury. I've talked about it many times in the past. And what separated it from all previous, like, homebrew games on the Dreamcast is previous releases were just like somebody made it for fun and they just put out the file and you could download it and burn it or whatever at the time. And you could just check it out. Like Beats of Rage was probably the most successful one of all of those. But they were just freeware. Feet of Fury was the first one where like money was spent. They made a real release. They pressed it. They sold it at retail. I think it's the only independent game that actually sold like retail. Like you would see it in stores, even if it was very brief. But mostly it was sold online. That set up the model for what would become the independent scene. And then there was that few years of overlap where, you know, until 2007 when Sega finally did their last release, which was Karos. That was the final officially licensed GD-ROM Sega Dreamcast game, and it was only in Japan, of course. But to follow that scene and to see how it would evolve, I mean, I remember a time where you were basically like begging developers to put games out, and now, wow, how cool is it that we've evolved? But yeah, that was the... You know, but again, Josh Prod, like, he has become like this guy who basically his model is fascinating to me because he'll just go around to various developers and be like, I like your game. I'm going to buy the rights or I'm going to license the rights and I'm going to officially convert it over to the Dreamcast. We're going to go into the source code. We're going to make the definitive edition on the Dreamcast. That's usually his go-to play. And it clearly works because I don't think there's too many. He has done a couple where it was basically like some level of emulation, but usually it's just straight up source code porting, which is pretty cool. But yeah, that's his first three. His next three, we have Rockettron or Rockettron, depending on how you want to pronounce that. This is a run and gun game, similar to like a Gunlord-ish type of thing, which was another Dreamcast game I had mentioned before. I remember this one being pretty fun, done by Astroport originally. But yeah, also, like all the other ones that he's done, they're all VGA compatible, which means they run in the high resolution modes. Actually, I don't think there is a single independent game that doesn't support the VGA modes. Next up, he did Tough Guy, which was kind of nice because it was the first fighting game in quite some time. The only other one I can even think of was Breakers, and that was also a Josh Prod release, although that one was done through emulation, so people got a little miffy about that one, but I think this one was a source code port. I don't remember, to be totally honest with you. This one was very similar to, it was a Street Fighter clone. Unapologetically so. Like the characters have like maps and they represent each country type of thing, and let's just say that Germany is not represented too positively. I'll leave it at that. You can go back and watch the original video if you want more information. But yeah, very cool. And then the last one that Josh Prod did was a game called Supercharged Robot Volkaiser. And I remember looking at this and being like, oh no, anime character. I do not like anime. Like unapologetically do not like it. But I was like, okay, whatever, we're going to play this. This game was awesome. It was a great, like, shoot 'em up that was totally bananas. It was just completely insane. And I remember thinking, like, this is one of the few games where... So when I have to record footage for these games, you know, you kind of go for a point, and then you stop, and you go do the work. This was, like, one of the few times where when I stopped, I was like, I don't want to stop. I want to keep playing. Screw making the video. But you can't. You got to be an adult. But I sit there and I'm like, man, I just want to keep playing this. This is a lot of fun. This was a blast of a game. At this point in time, and I believe all 6 of these actually technically came out in 2021. So I don't think Josh Prod has actually done a release in 2022, which is kind of surprising. But yeah, this is a blast, and you should check it out. But hey, there you go. Next up, this is where kind of Wave took over. At least that's how it looks. Wave is a publisher based out of the UK, and they've started picking up more Dreamcast games. The first one that I'm aware of that they did, not including Intrepid Izzy, because again, that's not this year, was Flea. Now, Flea is kind of an asterisk case. I include it, but I could see why someone would argue against it. Flea was made originally on the Dreamcast a few years ago by a guy named Alistair. Now, in his case, what he had done is he made the game for the NES, and then he basically just converted it over to the Dreamcast, and then he made his own little custom case, and he put it like on a CDR, and he mailed it out to people, and he sent it to me too. And I told him, like, dude, I appreciate the effort, but like, we got to draw the line. Like, it's got to be a pressed disc, otherwise it's just not a retail type of thing. And I didn't really expect him to ever take up that challenge, but to his credit, he did. He got together with Wave, and they actually did a full-on independent release of this, which was pretty cool. You know, it's actually a pretty good game. This is even a 2-disc set because it comes with a music CD of the game, which is awesome. I was not expecting a full-on soundtrack for this thing. But yeah, made by Low Tech Games. It's like, again, it's originally an NES puzzle game, but they did a full-on Dreamcast conversion, and it's a lot more fun than you'd expect. It's just like this thing where you hop as a flea. It's pretty cool. But again, check out the video if you're interested. Wave continued their onslaught. The next one up they did was Yeah Yeah Beavis 2. Now this one was kind of unique for me because the Dreamcast NES scene is pretty small, to be completely honest. But I tend to know a lot of the people in it. This one I know very well. This is John Riggs, like fellow YouTuber John Riggs. He's a good friend of mine. And all of a sudden he just has a Dreamcast release, which was kind of bizarre. So what he basically had done, and he told me, was like, yeah, you know, the whole story of the game, long story short, really long story short, they made this for the NES. That was the plan. And then they decided, you know, Wave basically hit him up and was like, hey, you know, do you want to put this on the Dreamcast? Because they had done like a soft conversion of it. And he's like, yeah. They're like, okay, finish it all up, blah, 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 send us the file, and boom, we'll publish it. And here it is in our physical reality. Yeah Yeah Beavis 2 on the Sega Dreamcast. Congratulations to John Riggs for getting that done. And to Wave, of course. The next one up, I feel like nobody really talked about except me. Because this is probably one of the most low-key, if not the most low-key, independent published game of the year, and that would be Tapeworm Disco Puzzle. This was also made by Low Tech Games, aka Alistair. However, this one was not published by Wave. I don't know why that is, because they clearly had already done Flea, which means this one was self-published. On the back, it has a limited edition number. I apparently have copy number 102, which kind of implies, and I would just guess, they probably only did like 200 copies of this. And as far as I know, nobody else ever picked it up, and it wasn't released by anybody else. It's a pretty fun game, actually. It's a spin-off of Flea using certain characters in a totally different puzzle game. Again, originally designed for the NES, but converted to the Dreamcast. Why it didn't get more attention, I'm not really sure. But if you are a hardcore Dreamcast collector, you might want to get this one, because I don't know how many copies of it ever will exist, unless somebody else repicks it up and redistributes it differently. But either way, there it go. It did come out this year. Then we have one that, again, now it's full-on asterisk time. We have The Texorcist, The Story of Ray Bibia. This one does not count, sort of, because this came out last year. I even showed it in last year's birthday video, so it really should not count, but it does sort of for a reason. This game was fascinating. And this game gave me so much hope. This, like, seriously inspired me, and the reason was twofold. One, this game was published by Head Up. Head Up is a developer and publisher based out of, I believe it's in Germany and Austria. At least they primarily cover those two countries. Like, you can go into a store there and see PS4 and PS5 games published by them. For them to want to make a Dreamcast game really just stunned me. I couldn't believe they were doing that. I mean, this was a big game, not released by Josh Prod or not released by Wave. It was just a completely different party, and a relatively successful one at that suddenly wants to make a Dreamcast game. Why? And on top of that, the game was very unique. It was literally like the first game in 20 years to use the Dreamcast keyboard meaningfully. Like, you have to play the game. You don't have to play the game with the keyboard, but you're supposed to. And, you know, you use the keyboard to fight off demons and stuff while you type words. And it's basically like this, you know, preacher type of thing, like an exorcist, whatever. And he's basically like shouting at demons, and you're typing out what he's saying, and that exorcises the demons. It's a great little game. So why are we talking about it if it came out over a year ago? Here's the problem. The game had a fatal game-breaking bug in it. Now, you wouldn't notice it until you get to, like, the 6th level, and I had only played as far as, like, the 2nd or 3rd level. What happens is, depending on if you're using the keyboard or if you're using a controller, you can get slightly different distances in the game, but the bugs basically prevent you from being able to finish it. It just crashes and stops working. And then when Head Up was contacted about this, they were like, can't patch Dreamcast, sorry. And that was pretty much the end of the story. I remember a lot of people being upset about that. Me too. I called them out in a video. I thought it was a bad practice. It's like, dude, why? And it was just heartbreaking, because it's like you're such a big company relative to everything else that exists still on the Dreamcast. You put something out, we support you, and no, what the hell? But to their credit, they changed their minds. They fixed it, and that's why we're talking about it. They released this. This is the Textorcist, the exercised version. If you had bought the original one, they would mail you this for free. All you had to do was like register on the website that you wanted it. So if you owned this and never did that, go do it. But they would just mail you the disc. Now this is the complete game with all the bugs, repaired and patched out. What's even cooler is that as far as the Dreamcast is concerned, they are exactly the same game. So if you were like playing the game originally and you had saved your data and right before the bug and you couldn't get past it, if you have this version, pop this in. The Dreamcast VMU will detect, hey, it's the exact same game. We're just going to continue where we left off, and then you can get through the game seamlessly. So make sure you get this if you bought the Textorcist already, and if you hadn't, I do recommend it. It is a really good game. It's just kind of unfortunate its release was literally buggy. But that's why it also doesn't count, because it's not really a new game this year. But it's worth noting. Next up, we have to talk about this one. This is, I think, like if you were to give out an award for best game of the year on this particular subset of new Dreamcast games, this is your winner, Postal. I did a video already on this. This was the European edition. This is the new Video Games New York North American style edition. I think there's also technically like a Japanese style artwork somewhere. I think this one's probably also reversible. But yeah, anyway, so this was great. Basically, the story with this goes is this is a very infamous game on the PC. Released in the late 90s. At some point in, maybe it was like 5 or 6 years ago, Running with Scissors, actually the developer of the game, dumped the source code to it online and basically encouraged people to convert it to other platforms. And a guy named Dan Redfield, I'm pretty sure his name is Dan Redfield, he took up that challenge and decided to bring it to the Dreamcast. And rather than just kind of quickly converting it over, the dude took his time. He did a lot of work to make sure that this thing would be a seamless, smooth, wonderful experience. Not only did he include like every single patch that was ever built into it, he also included like every little bit of DLC you could find, got that running in there. I'm not sure if he like made new stuff or exactly, but like he made it like the smoothest, cleanest experience you could. He also went through his own version a million times to make sure there were no additional bugs in there. And he like corrected things that would have been a problem that maybe lesser, developers wouldn't have noticed. For example, and this is somebody pointed this out in the comments of my video on it. In the original version of the game on PC, in order to end the level, you have to like type in a certain sequence of keys, which would not be possible on a Dreamcast. So he basically just corrected that so that it could just seamlessly move forward. Things like that. The dude took a lot of time and actually made sure that this was really good. And after all that, the conversion stuff aside, is the game actually good? Yes, it's a blast. Postal is an infamous game for a reason. It is a lot of fun. This, in my opinion, is the best indie Dreamcast game we got in the last calendar year. I highly recommend it. You can get it over if you're in Europe, I recommend getting it from Wave. If you're in North America, get it from Video Games New York, unless you like the reverse art style, whatever it is. But yeah, I highly suggest that one as well. The next one up, and basically the last one, if you ask me, was Shadow Gangs. And I just did a video on this not that long ago. Shadow Gangs, we got the European version here. I just got this. This is the North American Video Games New York edition. I also have like the big Kickstarter edition with the Japanese one, although I didn't bring that out here just because it takes up too much space. But yeah, this was a really fun game inspired by Shinobi. And to me, it looks more like a Streets of Rage, but that might just be the aesthetics. Gameplay-wise, it's supposed to be more like Shinobi. I really liked it. I thought it was a lot of fun, beautiful looking game. My only real criticism of it, and I stand by this, is that it has time limits on the levels, which I would not fundamentally have a problem with, except that the time limits are just too short. Because this game isn't just a matter of get from the left side of the screen to the right. You also have to kind of like meander and like find people that are like hidden and stuff, like hostages and all that. There's more adventuring in a platformer here than you would expect. Or platforming action adventure game, whatever you want to call it, and that creates a problem. It basically gets down to like a little bit of too stressful to actually finish like the level in time, and I feel like if you at least just doubled the length of that time, it would be fine, or just got rid of it entirely. I understand there's some stress element is good for the game to actually get you like to feel like there's some sense of danger or whatever, but it's just too short. That's my thing, and I realize the illogical response to that is, oh well, get good, son. But still, that's the only thing I didn't like about it. It's like you could have made that time limit a little bit better. But aside from that, I think it was a fantastic game. Also highly recommended. Now, the rest of these are basically just asterisks. The first one up is NonCasual Encounter. This is basically a demo of a game that's still coming up that was put out by... Actually, I'm not even sure who did this off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but yeah, this game is still coming out. Actually, my buddy James Reiner actually worked on this. The official final release is still coming. This is just like a demo. The demo itself is actually like published on a CDR and everything. I showed it when I originally got it. What I'm hoping is when they do a final release of this, they don't do the CDR thing. Please don't do the CDR thing. Put this out on an actual press disc so that everybody can take it more seriously. But as a demo, it's totally fine to use a CDR. It's a little surprising a Dreamcast game would bother with a demo at this point, though. There you go. That did exist. You can actually buy this if you want to. Odds are this will be like a super niche thing to have at some point. Not necessarily valuable, but yeah. Actually, BitStation I know for sure sells that if you're interested. One other one that I know BitStation does sell for sure, because they just sent it to me, is a game called Ghoul Grind, Night of the Necromancer. This is a bizarre release. Very bizarre release. So, to put this in context, you probably never saw a video of this on my channel. And there's a reason. I didn't make one. And you know why I didn't make one? I did not know this existed. That's how obscure this one is. It did come out within the last year. I think it came out in like December or something like that. But no one told me. Do you realize like how obscure it has to be for a new Dreamcast game to come out and for me to not hear about it? Like, that's my thing, man. Like, that's what I do. This thing flew way under the radar. So here's the story, as I can tell. This game was designed for the NES originally as a Kickstarter. This happened not that long ago. The team got the money, they made the game. They also hit a Kickstarter stretch goal of bringing it over to the Dreamcast. So they complied, they did it. And it's my understanding, though I have not exactly data mined the game to see if this is true, but this is what I was told. They didn't just take their NES ROM, throw it into a Dreamcast like NES emulator, and truck that onto a disc. They actually took the time to convert their own source code over to the Dreamcast. That's what I was told. So if that's the case, that's amazing. So they did it correctly. They promised a Dreamcast version, which is awesome. They did that. Then when you look at the release itself, they gave it like full artwork. They gave it a manual. The manual is super thick, and it's in color. They went all out. They did it amazing. So why was this never a thing? Why was this not more popular? Why did I not hear about it? Because apparently it uses a CDR. Why? Why? You had it. You freaking had it. Why? That just bugs me to no end. It's like, dude, you did every step right, and then the last one you struck out and you fell over. I don't understand why you would do a CDR version of that. So it's cool the game exists, and I'm really hoping though that it goes to that next level. Again, like Flea. Flea went through this exact same growing pain. It came out, had a nice little release, but it was a CDR, so you can't take it too seriously. Do this. Convert this over. Publish this officially. Whether it's Wave, Video Games New York, Josh Prod, BitStation themselves, whoever it is, get this on a press disc. Let everybody enjoy this. And, I mean, clearly nobody had really heard of it. Like, if you look this up, there's like 2 videos on YouTube of anybody who's even acknowledging that there is a Dreamcast game called this. And I'm not one of them, which should tell you something. So this game basically flew under the radar completely and deserves a brand new, fresh release. However, if you actually want to get this original version, which I was told the print run on this was very small, like maybe 100 copies, if not less, this is available at BitStation if you want to check this out, because it may never actually get the pressed release. I hope it does. That's just me spouting wishful thinking. I'm not saying that's actually happening. But yeah, if it doesn't, then this is the only version you're ever going to have of that. And then the last one up, before we talk more about the contest details, is from Video Games New York. They were cool enough to just send me this very recently. This is a game called Hermes. Now, Hermes is again an asterisk because it really doesn't count. The reason it doesn't count, this came out in 2017. So why are we talking about it now? Well, this one's bizarre. I actually did a video on this game back in 2017 thinking its days were over. It's just a cool game about this, like a platform where you play as this chef trying to catch a chicken and your chicken keeps pooping and escaping you, and it's bizarre. It's very bizarre. Made by Retro Guru, who has a very bizarre sense of humor, which is I'm totally behind. The reason we're talking about it, though, is that Video Games New York decided to pick up the game and re-release it. But instead of just re-releasing it, they apparently took the time to go in and correct some bugs, add some content, and update the game after a few years of just, no activity on it, which makes sense. And not only did they release that this way, they went all out with probably one of the most unique independent releases for the Dreamcast ever. They did a limited edition that comes with a VMU. So I asked Dan about this. I was like, did you guys make new VMUs? Like, how did you even do that? And he was like, well, no. What they did is they had a surplus of new old stock of the green VMU that Sega made. But what they did do is they took those, they shipped them off to a factory who basically print screened like new imaging over them. So that it actually says Hermes and it shows some artwork on the game. This is a limited edition VMU exclusive to this bundle of Hermes. Only available at Video Games New York. So if you're like a big Dreamcast hardware guy, and especially if you like the VMUs, because I know there's a lot of people who subset collect those, it's debatable whether or not it counts, because it is actually Sega hardware, even though it's not Sega authorized, but it also got a nice release. I don't know. I think that's really cool. So I would recommend checking that one out. It was also just a fun game, to be honest with you. So there you go. That was the big amount of activity that we got for the Sega Dreamcast in the last calendar year. And as you can see, completely insane. Like I said, Jordan's numbers. He's going to put up big numbers in the game, too. So, but yeah, let's talk about that contest, shall we? So again, the Bit Station was super cool here, and everybody give them a huge shout out because they did not have to do this. They just volunteered it. If you go to the Twitter link in the description, follow me on Twitter. Follow them, the Bit Station, on Twitter. I'll put all that information down there. If you follow both of us and you retweet that tweet, you are entered to win a Dreamcast game. We're going to have 3 winners. And each winner can pick whichever game they want from 3 different choices. The 3 choices you will have is Intrepid Izzy, Ghoul Grind, and Finding Teddy. Now, I didn't talk about Finding Teddy in this video because it's an older game that had come out a couple of years ago, but I did an entire video on it. This was a fun game as well, like a little puzzle, like adventure-style game, like a point-and-click puzzle adventure game. And so, basically, anybody who wins can pick whichever of the 3. So if all 3 people picked Intrepid Izzy, all 3 people get Intrepid Izzy. Whatever the combination it is, it's all good. You don't. It's not like we're just giving one of each away. So those are your 3 options. And if you want to win one, again, link in the description. Follow me, follow them, retweet on Twitter. Done. You're entered, and we'll pull the content. We'll contact the winners shortly afterwards. So that'll about do it. I want to thank, of course, Video Games New York for donating some of this stuff. Josh Prod and Pixel Heart for donating some of this, as well as Wave. Obviously, the biggest shout out here has to go to the Bit Station. Not only did they donate some of this stuff, they also are donating stuff to you guys potentially if you win. So very happy birthday to the Sega Dreamcast. Everybody go out, play your Dreamcast, share some memories. Tell me what you're doing today if you're interested in the Dreamcast. What are you playing? Are you playing some of the new stuff? Are you playing some of the old stuff? What are you doing with the Dreamcast? I want to know. Happy birthday, Sega Dreamcast, and thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, follow me on all the social media stuff in the description, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, etc. Spreadshirt as well if you want. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.